Welcome, everybody, to Victory Circle Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Wilson. Today we have Kim Brady. Hey, Kim.
Hi, nice to see you again, Jason. Thank you for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a pleasure to have you, Kim. It's always a pleasure. Kim is an awesome business coach. She's also a veteran soccer player from university. She played D1 soccer. Kim has a special event coming up on June the 28th, right, Kim?
Yes, sir. Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Let us know what that event is about.
So I am going to be sharing with a small group of people how we can talk about stemming the rise in student athlete suicide. It's a big topic. We've lost a lot of people, and I want to talk about it. I want us all to figure out a way to help others. As you know, it makes me emotional. It's okay. It should make us emotional. And I think that by preparing this topic of conversation, it will shed some light on some of the things that are difficult for student athletes and what they face differently than different populations. Obviously, there's intersectionality with different populations, but how we treat and how we work with our athletes in general may be part of the problem that's causing these to happen more frequently. And I think we need to address that. And I think we need to tap into who we are as athletes and how we can help. Yeah.
I think that's great, Kim. And, like you said, it's a really, really hot topic right now.
Yeah.
And, not too many people are talking about what they can do to prevent people from committing suicide. So I really, really applaud you on that. But do you see yourself continuing as a business coach, or do you transitioning into something more related on this topic?
Great question. I used to be a therapist. So my background was as a family therapist. I always joke with people, I was not a couch therapist. I didn't just sit there, twiddle my thumbs and fix your problems and that you were talking about. I was a in-home family therapist, and I worked with severely abused and neglected children, and was in community agencies, was in schools, was in juvenile halls, et cetera. And I did that for 7 years. And the last client that I actually took before I left actually attempted suicide at school. She was a 16-year-old girl. And I was called to the school to handle the crisis. And when I got there, I was startled to see that there was no ambulance, no police, no nothing. And when I walked in, my kid that I had been working with, who had a very traumatic past, had attempted at school and was bleeding, and her lips were blue, and no one called 911. They took her attempt as an attention-seeking attempt as opposed to a life-threatening attempt. And I spent 12 hours getting that kid the help that she needed. And I was so spent emotionally from that process, and so tired of working with adults who allowed this kid to be in this scenario. We as adults were failing kids. And this was 20 years ago. And I left the field at a very young age. I had spent 7 years in college and graduate school, almost a year away from PhD, to then have 7 years in the field to go, why am I doing this if we're not protecting our kids? And so I had to leave. I had to exit that arena for a long time. And then as my evolution went into career paths and all these other things, when I decided to do my business coaching practice that I've been doing for the past couple of years after I sold my company, it's just evolved in kind of this culmination of, I take my therapy skills, even though I'm not licensed, right? And I work with and have coached soccer for 15 years, but I was coaching for the past 3 here back in Southern California. And some of my kids are really struggling with suicidal ideation. And some of the parents had reached out and said, hey, my daughter is getting treatment for these issues. We wanted you to know about it because we do know your background. Can you help support us in this process? And so even though I don't want to be a therapist, I have to use that counseling hat. I still feel that it's important that we talk about things that are hard, and that we again, it makes me emotional, but I don't want to lose any more kids. Right.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm doing it. And I'm doing it in a way where I am asking for people to pay for it because of two things. One, I want a small group of people who are willing to put a little bit of money where their mouth is, that says it's no longer a hashtag here's a hashtag suicide prevention, and then that's all we do. Or here's a suicide crisis hotline, and that's all we do. I don't want to do that anymore, So it brings up intense stuff for me, but it also brings up intense stuff for others, that if those of us who are working in this arena are exhausted, and we need parents to step up, we need colleagues to step up, we need to learn the tools of what to recognize before it's too late. We need to do things that's like, hey, let's talk about hard shit. Like, this is hard. What people have gone through the past few years with the pandemic, with everything, with people's economy, with COVID, with all these things, has had such an impact on our athletes in our minds and us as a collective. And if we don't come together and cross barriers, whether it's shaking hands and being on podcasts and having tears shed and talking about it, why are we doing this thing called life, right? Like, that's the deep part of me that just, my friend said, please do this. And so I am, that's why I'm doing it. And it's also, I want to keep the group small, because when you do talk about really heavy things, or you bring up things that may trigger things that are really difficult for others to manage, I want to be able to answer some questions, provide some tools, provide some local and state and federal resources and information, so that people can do something with it. If they need help and seek therapy, that's brilliant. Like, I've been to therapy. I go to therapy. I was a therapist. I played soccer. I coach soccer. I give back to the game that raised me, right? And if, as an athlete, I never, thankfully, ever experienced that kind of depth of pain to say, I need to exit. I haven't had that experience, but I know a lot of people who have, and, my family members have. I've lost family to suicide. I've lost friends to suicide. So I can speak to it from a very personal level. And just, I invite people to be part of that safe space. Now, whether I go and do that continually, I don't want to go back and rehash everything all the time, which is another reason why I'm recording it. And I'm going to house the recording as an online thing on my website after the live event as well. Just a little bit, $20 to buy the event, because I want people, if they can't join us, right, I want them to be able to at least hear some stories and do that, but also that it's not just floating around out there, meaning the private conversations we might have aren't going to just be public and free, out and about. Because if we are sharing personal stories, I kind of want that to be for those who've been willing to go into that process, because it's hard. It's really hard, and so that's, do I feel that I'm going to be that kind of person, go back into therapy again and do all that? No, I don't have the bandwidth to it, but if I can do something to change it and help, that's what I'm doing. Yeah.
Okay. So for this event on the 28th, then who exactly are you expecting to come? Is it parents or is it?
Yeah. Great question. Parents, coaches, law enforcement, people who have to come and work with people in crisis, right? Anyone who really is affected by sport and the mental health of our athletes. We're witnessing this across all ages. This isn't just the young athlete, right? But we've had a lot of collegiate athletes who've recently taken their lives, and that's just horrifying for those of us that it's a small circle. Those of us who are athletes, like, it seems like we're everywhere, but we're really not. Those of us who played at high levels, we're still community, and when you lose one, it feels like that hits you personally, whether you knew him or not. Right.
Yeah.
I hate that I get teary eyed all the time, but it's just me.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, what do you think then if you held every seminar for a different group of people?
Yeah, I mean, I could do that. Yeah, I could do that. But I think, though, if it's different group of people, as if that hat doesn't need to be worn by us, right? I think that's different, because you could be a parent and a coach. you can be a teacher and also work with law enforcement. Like I speak to law enforcement officers all the time on LGBTQ issues, right? Because I do public speaking on those kinds of events as well. So, as far as who it's targeted to, every single one of us will be affected by suicide. Every one of us.
Yeah.
And if we need to learn more about reducing the stigma of mental health, we have to act as if we all are affected by it. Mental health and mental illness are two different things. We go take care of our medical care, right? We do preventative medicine such as mammograms or colonoscopies, or we do things like going to the dentist to help get our teeth, cleaned versus fixed. And we can do the same thing with mental health and say, you don't have to be in crisis to seek support, right? To reach out and to provide help doesn't mean you have to be a counselor. You don't have to be with a title that says, I am responsible for this person. It could just be a friend or a family member, and you don't know how to manage it when something happens. If there's a deep conversation or some difficulties or red flags that are going on, what do we look for? Each one of us could become victim to suicidal ideation. That's the crazy part about understanding this and researching this. Even though I've never been suicidal, it's possible that I could become that way depending on certain triggers in my life. And that's what they're learning in trying to prevent this, that we can't just think that it won't happen to me, that there are no red flags, I didn't see it. We collectively as a human population need to reduce the stigma of what mental health should look like, what treatment can look like, and how do we help each other. So for me, it's, the more information we can get out there, the better. And I'm just talking from my own personal perspective, which obviously I'm not a researcher and I'm not licensed. So I want to also be cautious and cognizant of those roles of people who really do. I'm putting the studies together and the data together, but I'm not the person who's actually taking that role on and studying this ad nauseum, because I don't have the bandwidth to do that. You see how much I cry just talking about it. I wouldn't be able to do it to be in it all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So how many people would you like to see at your event?
I have space for 100 people. So I have tickets are available for 100 people. So that's obviously a mid-sized room basically on virtual stuff. But if 10 people came, I'm okay with that, because exponentially the ripple effect of those 10 people, if they hit another 10 people that said I could save the life as one person, matters. Yes. Why not? Yeah. So I have room for seats for 10 or 100, but I don't care how many show up. I really don't. I want it to be intimate enough to be able to be real and raw and also hopeful, Yeah.
Yes.
Because that's the point. Like, why do we play sports? Why do we do the things that we love? Why are we in such pain? Let's try to find our light through the pain. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's great. Well, is there any kind of common denominator with these kids that commit suicide? Is there a common reason?
The reasons may be different, but some of the red flags can be similar. It could be a breakup. It could be under the pressure of being perfect. Athletes are forced to look perfect, to be the model and the epitome of health, right? The pressures at times where all of a sudden eating disorders are rampant in athletes, which they're not in the general population. But if you have a severe eating disorder, you're more likely to have other parts of mental illness pieces that are coming at play, right? And an eating disorder is not just someone who has anorexia. It could also be a 350-pound lineman that people are literally force feeding 8 steaks to make sure they add 50 pounds. And all of a sudden they're super sick because they're eating so much and they're gaining so much weight and they're physically going into a collision sport. I think that people need to look at what are we asking of our athletes, right? Our athletes are being asked to perform under a microscope in ways that you and I, when we were growing up, we didn't have social media. We had bullying, but not in the millions, not in the armchair couch people, right? Like, we talk about NFL players and boxers, right? But these are young kids that are going through this experience and getting bullied online. and they make a mistake in a game and they're getting death threats. I mean, the society of attacking one another has been allowed to happen. And it's really important that we look at a mirror and say, what am I leading? How do I behave when I see someone not perform? Am I screaming and yelling at the TV and telling them they're terrible and that they should be benched and they should be cut? How am I leading that, right?
Yeah.
And I've seen parents get in fights and punch referees in games for 10-year-old kids. And I think the thing is, this is one of the study facts that I was looking at. The CDC has found that the highest cohort of people who are dying by suicide since 2010 are 10 to 14-year-old kids in general, 10 years old. So if we are thinking that it's only adults or college age kids, we're losing our youth. Our children are killing themselves. And that statistic is mind-boggling to me.
Right.
And if we aren't, as adults, willing and able to talk about these things and to say, hey, honey, it's okay to make a mistake. I love you no matter what, right? If we aren't modeling that behavior and we aren't teaching that behavior to others, we're going to grow into more fragile people emotionally and not be able to manage pressure and not be able to manage stigma and not be able to manage that. And so the lens is different for athletes than it is for some other cohorts, but 10 to 14-year-old kids, that's exponentially dying by suicide. That's unacceptable to me.
Yeah.
It's unacceptable to me. And I think that we need to pay attention. We need to pay attention. You and I didn't grow up at a time when we had to worry about people shooting us in school.
No, not at all.
Right. And so to me, it's not a topic about guns. It's a topic about we're allowing our children to kill each other. And that's deep and that's heavy. And I think we need to face that. That's the mirror in front of our face of what can I do differently and not feel helpless and not feel hopeless. That's what fuels me. I can't continue on this pathway, right? We have to do something to change it, whatever that something is. And if it's a small little webinar for people to be able to talk about it, if it's reaching out to student athletes like I do and just talking to the kids and saying, hey, you're more than your sport. There's more to you than that. That's what I love doing, the athlete transition coaching. That's my wheelhouse. That's what I love, is finding the whole human inside that athlete body, and realizing they deserve to grow into an adult that uses all those athlete skills into other things. I love that. That's the part that I want to help embody these young people to do.
Well, Kim, what would happen in case that, people go to your event, they love it so much that they say, Kim, can we have another seminar? I mean, where would you go from there?
Yeah, of course. I'm more than happy to set up speaking engagements with people. I am hired to do speaking engagements, as I mentioned, on LGBTQ stuff. So I've done volunteer work. I am a paid speaker, can create conversation and keynotes depending on people's budgets. We can look at various things. If they need to fly me into somewhere, I'm more than happy to do those things, obviously, because I think if I resonate with one person, maybe I resonate with 10. It doesn't matter to me I don't need to be in 100,000 person room and think that I'm, some great person. It's, if I resonate with you and you need my help, let's talk about how I can help you do that. And that's what I do for a living. So, let's discuss the price points and let's discuss what is going to benefit you. That's what I love to do. That's how I think I can affect change the best, is being real, being raw, and just showing up the best way I know how.
I mean, I'm very passionate about this as well. And, I'll do whatever I can to help. Why is that? Because you're a genuine person, you're a caring person, and, people can sense that. Yeah,
you are too, sir. Ever since we met a few months ago, I genuinely appreciate your friendship, your guidance, your support. It's awesome.
I appreciate it. Same here.
We're in it together, my friend. I think that's the piece. Is I think that's something special about athletes too. We play sports, or we've been in sports that are global. They're global communicators. Sports communicates across boundaries and ethnicity and race and gender and all this stuff. If we play a sport, we speak the same language. And I think that is something special and unique to athletes in general, is that we understand athlete process. And we understand that even if I don't play your sport or you don't play mine, the mutual respect of what it took to get to the level that you get to is always there. And I don't think that's always seen by people who don't play sports. Yeah.
Right. So Kim, thank you so much for being on our show. We look forward to seeing you on June the 28th. What time is your event?
9:30 in the morning, Pacific Standard Time, California time. It will go for about 45 minutes to an hour with a little bit of Q&A, depending on what people want to talk about. I already had my slide deck reviewed a little bit by the guy who's going to help me moderate it. I want to fix a few things. There's going to be a lot of meat and potatoes in there, a lot of facts, a lot of information, a lot of red flags, a lot of what can we do, not just focusing on the difficulties, but what can we do? And that's the most important thing, the tools and the resources. And, I try to compile a resource list for people that's like a one sheet that they're like, I can reach out to these groups and I can find answers somewhere, wherever I am. So it's definitely focused on the United States folks. I think that's important. I don't know access to things like in Europe and things like that, but obviously some of those resources could possibly have international contacts if needed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that, probably the biggest problem anyway is in the States.
Yeah.
I mean,
we have a massive issue in our country compared to others. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. Yeah. So ladies and gentlemen, don't wait until you see something like this happen to somebody that you know. This is meant to be preventative medicine, as Kim said. So please take advantage of this opportunity and check Kim out on June the 28th.
Yes. I think one takeaway from today's podcast is that people need to understand that you don't have to be in crisis to seek help, and you can make a difference. Yeah.
Kim, thank you so much.
You bet.
All right. Take care.
You bet.
See you soon. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you for watching Victory Circle Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.